Anahuac, Texas, June 1832. A Mexican garrison commander named Juan Davis Bradburn has just thrown 2 American lawyers in jail. No charges, no trial, no explanation. Word spreads through the settlements like fire through dry grass. Within days, a mob of armed Texan settlers is riding for Anahuac to free them. They are not yet calling it revolution. They are calling it justice. But the shots that are about to be fired, 4 years before the Alamo, will be the first shots of a war that neither side is ready to admit has already begun. Welcome back to the Western Ledger. I'm Lamar. Last time we traced the life of Stephen F. Austin, the man who built Texas one land grant at a time. Today we follow the fault lines he could see forming, but couldn't stop. By 1830, Mexico had realized what it had done. It had invited 35,000 Americans into its territory and lost control of its own frontier. What followed was 5 years of escalating tension, broken promises, and provocation on both sides, until the only thing left was war. This is the story of how the Texas Revolution became inevitable. By 1830, Mexico was looking at Texas and seeing a crisis in slow motion. Americans outnumbered Tejanos, Mexican-born Texans, by roughly 10 to 1. The settlers were prosperous, armed, and increasingly resentful of Mexican authority. They were trading directly with American merchants, ignoring import duties, and practicing the Protestant religion in a Catholic nation. The man who decided to do something about it was President Anastasio Bustamante. His government passed what became known as the Law of April 6, 1830, and it was a declaration of war in everything but name. The law banned further Anglo-American immigration to Texas. It ended the empresario contracts that had brought settlers there in the first place. It abolished slavery in the territory, directly threatening the cotton economy the settlers had built. And it ordered fortified customs houses garrisoned by Mexican troops at the major Texas ports. To the settlers, it was pure betrayal. Mexico had invited them in, made promises, and now, just as their farms were producing, just as their towns were growing, it was pulling up the drawbridge. To Mexico, it was belated self-defense. The government had simply woken up too late to what was happening on its own frontier. Both were right, which is what made it so dangerous. Customs post on Galveston Bay, where Mexican soldiers had been stationed to enforce the law of April 6th. Colonel Juan Davis Bradburn, an American-born officer serving Mexico, was the commandant there. He was rigid, suspicious, and convinced, not without reason, that the settlers were smuggling goods and conspiring against Mexican authority. In June of 1832, he arrested 2 American lawyers, William Barrett Travis and Patrick Jack. The charge was inciting revolt. The evidence was thin. The settlers didn't care about the evidence. Armed colonists rode on Anahuac to free them. The standoff escalated. Mexican soldiers fired. Texans fired back. It was the first exchange of gunfire between Texan settlers and Mexican troops, 4 years before anyone had heard of the Alamo. What happened next was extraordinary. The settlers drafted a document called the Turtle Bayou Resolutions, and in it they made a remarkable claim. They declared their loyalty not to Bustamante's government, but to the Mexican Constitution of 1824, the federalist constitution that guaranteed states' rights. They weren't rebels, they insisted. They were the real Mexicans. It was Bustamante who had betrayed the true Mexico. It was a clever argument, and it happened to be perfectly timed, because somewhere in Mexico, a general named Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna had just launched a rebellion against Bustamante using exactly the same language. Santa Anna called himself a defender of the 1824 Constitution. The settlers cheered him. They would come to regret that very deeply. Santa Anna was everything the Texan settlers wanted in a Mexican leader. Charismatic, military, and apparently committed to the federalist principles that protected their autonomy. By 1833, with Santa Anna in power, the mood in Texas was almost optimistic. The settlers organized the Convention of 1833, drafting petitions requesting separate statehood for Texas, an exemption from the anti-immigration law, and other reforms. Stephen Austin was chosen to carry these petitions personally to Mexico City. He arrived to find Santa Anna uninterested. The president kept disappearing to his hacienda. Meetings were postponed. Weeks became months. Austin waited in Mexico City for the better part of a year, watching his petitions gather dust. In frustration, Austin wrote a letter back to the Texas settlements suggesting they go ahead and organize a state government without waiting for formal approval from Mexico City. That letter was intercepted. In January of 1834, Austin was arrested for sedition. He spent nearly 2 years in Mexican custody, much of it in solitary confinement, while Santa Anna's government slowly revealed its true character. Because Santa Anna was not what he had claimed to be, he never was. He was simply the most skilled political survivor in a country full of them, and he had used the Federalist banner to seize power, then discarded it the moment power was secure. In May of 1834, Santa Anna dissolved the Mexican Congress. He suspended the Constitution of 1824, the document the Texas settlers had declared their loyalty to just 2 years earlier at Turtle Bayou. He then turned his army on the state of Zacatecas, which had dared to resist his centralization of power. His forces crushed the Zacatecan militia and, by most accounts, allowed his soldiers to loot and massacre the population for 2 days. The message was clear. Santa Anna was not a Federalist hero. He was a dictator, and Texas was next. Stephen Austin was finally released from custody and arrived back in Texas in September of 1835. He was a changed man. The patience, the diplomacy, the endless negotiation, 15 years of it, had produced a prison cell. He addressed a crowd in Brazoria. The man who had spent his entire adult life urging restraint told them what they had already decided for themselves. War is our only resource. Within weeks, Mexican troops were marching on the small settlement of Gonzales, demanding the return of a cannon the colonists had been given for protection against Comanche raids. The settlers buried the cannon, sent for reinforcements, and when the Mexican soldiers arrived, they raised a flag with an image of the cannon and 4 words that would echo through Texas history: "Come and take it." On October 2, 1835, the first shots of the Texas Revolution were fired. The war had begun. The cannon at Gonzales was, in one sense, a ridiculous object to start a revolution over. But revolutions rarely start over the thing they appear to start over. This one started over 15 years of broken promises, demographic panic, cultural collision, and mutual distrust, with a small bronze cannon as the final spark. Next time, the Alamo, the 13-day siege, the 90-minute battle, and the story of 3 men who ignored orders to abandon a crumbling mission and paid for it with their lives. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss it. I'll see you there.